Where are they now? The cast of Remington Steele 5 seasons. 8 Faces. A show that launched a superstar, nearly gave him the most iconic role in cinema history, and then snatched it away at the last possible second. 4 of those 8 people are no longer with us. One died in her husband's arms. Another earned a real badge from the FBI. This is the full story of every one of them. 1. Pierce Brosnan, Remington Steele. When Pierce Brosnan stepped into frame as Remington Steele, he was playing a con man pretending to be a detective who was pretending to be a person that had never existed. 3 layers of fiction, and he made every one of them convincing, polished and charming on the surface, with just enough hidden anxiety beneath to make you wonder who was really there. That grace was earned, not inherited. Brosnan grew up in Drogheda, Ireland. His father left when he was an infant. His mother emigrated to England to pursue nursing, and for years he was passed between relatives. A stepfather eventually brought him to a local cinema. The film showing that night happened to be a James Bond picture. Something in that darkened theater decided the next several decades of his life. He trained at the Drama Centre in London, married Australian actress Cassandra Harris, and followed the work to America. Remington Steele made him famous almost immediately. Then came what he would later describe as the most painful moment of his professional life. In May 1986, after 4 seasons, the network canceled the series. Brosnan signed the contract to play James Bond in The Living Daylights. The wardrobe fittings happened. The script was there. Then, on the final night of the 60-day window before the deal expired, the phone rang. The network had reversed its decision and renewed the show, specifically to hold on to him. Bond producer Albert Broccoli refused to attach a 007 to a weekly TV series and gave the role to Timothy Dalton. A fellow cast member later noted that Brosnan wasn't angry so much as quietly devastated. He had watched the role of a lifetime leave with someone else, and there was very little he could say publicly about any of it. He waited 9 years. GoldenEye arrived in 1995 and became one of the most successful entries in the franchise. 4 films followed. He married journalist Keely Shea Smith in 2001, became an American citizen, started his own production company, and built a second family. The boy once shuffled between relatives, eventually surrounded by children of his own choosing. He is 73 now, still working, still photographed on the beaches of Hawaii and California with the ease of a man who has fully outlasted his misfortune. 2. Efrem Zimbalist Jr., Daniel Chalmers. A few episodes in, an older thief appeared, a man called Daniel Chalmers, silver-haired and unhurried, carrying himself like the person Steele might eventually become if he stayed lucky long enough. Efrem Zimbalist Jr. played him with a voice that seemed carved from expensive wood and a stillness that made every younger actor in the scene lean toward him without realizing it. 2 quiet facts surrounded that casting. Zimbalist was Stephanie Zimbalist's actual father, and on set, he reportedly became a steadying presence for Brosnan as well. His biography sounds almost invented. Son of a celebrated violin virtuoso and a Metropolitan Opera soprano. He studied at Yale, then went to war, fighting through Normandy and the Hurtgen Forest as a young lieutenant, taking a wound that earned him a Purple Heart. He could have rested on that history alone, and no one would have blamed him. Instead, he became one of the most recognizable faces on American television, twice. First as the suave private investigator Stu Bailey on 77 Sunset Strip through the late 1950s, then as the methodical federal agent who would define his legacy. For 9 years, he starred as Inspector Louis Erskine on the FBI. Every episode closed with real photographs of real fugitives from the Bureau's most wanted list. Some of those broadcasts led to actual arrests. J. Edgar Hoover personally endorsed the series, opened the Bureau's files to its producers, and maintained a personal correspondence with the actor for years. In 2009, the FBI brought Zimbalist in and awarded him an honorary special agent badge, the Bureau's highest civilian honor, presented by the director himself. He had spent decades narrating FBI recruitment films and raising money for the families of agents killed in the line of duty. He also gave his voice to Alfred the Butler in an animated Batman series, a gift to an entirely different generation that would never recognize the face behind it. He had grief to carry too. His first wife died of cancer in 1950, a loss he identified as the experience that most shaped who he became. His second marriage, the one that produced Stephanie, ended in divorce. He died on May 2, 2014, at his ranch in Solvang, California, at 95, having spent his last days playing golf and seeing friends. His children made the announcement themselves. Daniel Chalmers was a thief who never paid for a single thing he took. Efrem Zimbalist Jr. lived his entire life on the opposite side of that line. The FBI gave him a badge to confirm it. 4. Doris Roberts, Mildred Krebs. The character on the page was a glamorous 35-year-old rival for Steele's attention. The producers ended up with a 57-year-old woman who walked in and refused to read for anything beneath what she was worth. She won the part outright. They rewrote the character to match her. Doris Roberts played Mildred Krebs, a former IRS investigator with a soft spot for Steele and no patience for anyone else's nonsense. With a working woman's bluntness and comic instincts so precise, they made a supporting character into the emotional backbone of the whole trio. The road to that audition had not been smooth. Her father left when she was small. She grew up in New York, raised by her mother and a stepfather whose name she eventually took. She studied at the actor's studio after midnight, the only time her first husband would agree to watch their son. She said later that none of the men in her early life had wanted her to succeed. None of that stopped her. She had already won an Emmy before this show for a single devastating episode of St. Elsewhere. Her larger fame still lay ahead. As Marie Barone on Everybody Loves Raymond, she collected 4 more Emmys and became a permanent fixture in American living rooms. She kept working almost to the very end. In her late 70s, she wrote a cookbook. She appeared before a congressional panel to argue that Hollywood's treatment of older actors deserved to be taken as seriously as racism or sexism. Even near the end, she was still asking out loud why no one seemed to be writing parts for people her age. Her steadiest anchor was the novelist William Goyen, whom she married in 1963 after a first marriage that had clarified what she didn't want. He died of leukemia in 1983, and she never remarried. She leaned instead on her son, who became her manager. She died in her sleep in Los Angeles on April 17, 2016, at 90, just 2 weeks after appearing on an industry panel about women in the business. She was buried at Westwood Village Memorial Park. Mildred Krebs fussed over a boss who barely needed her. Doris Roberts was told at 57 that she was past it, and spent the next 3 decades collecting the awards an entire industry assumed she'd never see. 5. James Reed, Murphy Michaels. Murphy Michaels was the third wheel, the loyal junior detective who genuinely cared for Laura, who would have been good for her, and who had to watch her fall for the charming fraud anyway. James Reed gave the character a quiet decency and an ache that never announced itself, and audiences felt it even if they couldn't name it. He drifted into acting almost by accident, starting college as a forestry student before a university theater program at Oregon caught hold of him. He worked off-Broadway and through regional stages before landing a small early role on Cheers. Then came this show, and then the decision that changed his life. When the producers restructured after season 1, they concluded that the chemistry between the 2 leads played cleaner without a third character in the middle. Murphy was written out. Reed was let go from a hit series after a single year. It was the luckiest thing that ever happened to him. He walked directly into the lead role of George Hazard in the North and South miniseries, one of the highest-rated television events ever broadcast. He appeared in Beaches in 1988. He later spent years on Charmed as the father of the Hallowell sisters. More importantly, he met someone. On the set of North and South, he met actress Wendy Kilborn. They married in 1988 and built a private life together, a son, a daughter, and a loss that Kilborn later described publicly, a daughter named Willa, stillborn in 1994. Reed went back to school in his 40s and earned a master's degree in psychology from Pepperdine University. At 72, he is still acting and directing, including a 4-year run on Days of Our Lives. Murphy lost the girl and got cut from the story. James Reed lost the job and found the role and the marriage the show itself never could have offered him. 6. Cassandra Harris, Felicia. She appeared as a glamorous woman from Steele's complicated past. The audience had no way of knowing they were watching the leading man's actual wife. Cassandra Harris played Felicia with the effortless confidence of someone long accustomed to being the most watched person in any room. The private charge running beneath that performance, that the woman on screen seducing her husband's fictional alter ego was the woman he came home to at night. was invisible to everyone watching at home. She had been building toward that set for years. An Australian who enrolled in drama school at 12 and worked across 2 continents, she had already played a Bond girl, Countess Liesel in For Your Eyes Only in 1981. And it was on that production that she introduced her husband, then almost entirely unknown, to the producers who controlled the Bond franchise. She opened the door that would eventually let him walk through it. She had been a model, appearing in a volume celebrating the world's most beautiful women. She married Brosnan in 1980. Their son was born in 1983. She raised her 2 older children alongside him, children he adopted as his own after their father died. In 1987, she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. The same disease had already taken her mother. The family relocated to Malibu, and Brosnan stepped back professionally to stay close. She died on December 28, 1991, in a Los Angeles hospital, with her husband beside her. She was 43, though several obituaries listed her as 39, the younger age she had given for most of her public life. The cruelty didn't stop there. Years later, her daughter Charlotte was diagnosed with and died from the same disease. 3 generations of women in that family lost to it. Felicia was a fictional woman of glamour and danger on a Tuesday night detective show. Cassandra Harris was the woman who handed her husband the door to James Bond and didn't live long enough to see him walk through it.